seconds to set up your question and ask your question so that we can allow the panelists to answer the question. And once you ask a question once, let somebody else ask a question, okay? If you take more than 2 minutes to ask your question, I'm going to turn off your mic. Okay? Good?
That's good.
All right, thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. MC. May you please announce yourself and then you take your 45 seconds. Hello. Yes, yes, please. My sister in the yellow jacket. I'm sorry
my
for
name is Linda Foinding.
Linda.
Thank you so much for this amazing panel and this amazing day of discussions. I'm glad to be here today, and I'm glad I came. So a few of the panelists spoke of youth engagement in the creative industries and the tech industries in terms of entrepreneurship. And in that space, it hasn't been seen very prestigious by our parents and by our community. So we don't have a lot of support because it's not it's not a track like being a doctor or a lawyer. And as a tech professional myself, building an entrepreneurship venture in this sector has been difficult because our diasporan community, we do not receive the innovative support that we need and to try to disrupt the scene like Mrs. Thompson mentioned at the beginning. So how can we who aspire to be entrepreneurs do so successfully with the limited resources in our communities? And where can we find support in terms of direct resources and VC funding opportunities, for example, in order to grow? Thank you. I was right there.
Very good. So did you direct your question to any of the panelists or someone can jump in?
Yeah, the person who feels like they can answer that, please do. Thank you.
And Joseph, by the way, there are other former panelists in the audience.
That are in the audience.
Anybody can answer former panelists as well.
Please feel free to pick the mic and answer the question about creative industry and engagement with the youth.
I think somebody mentioned it earlier, but we haven't had the pleasure, or our parents didn't have the pleasure or the opportunity to be in some of these creative spaces, right? And so I think that there is the generational gap in maybe just understanding, but we need more creative people to come up with more creative solutions to challenges that we have, right? So it's really, really important. I think that finding community is important, and maybe as part of what your ask is, it's trying to find those groups of people who are in similar spaces as you, who are having that shared experience that you're having. In terms of funding, finding the venture capital firms or the firms that are looking for people that are in those industries, because creative doesn't mean anything less than healthcare or law, right? It's just maybe an angle that hasn't necessarily been as explored as much. So two things: finding the community of people that are in similar spaces as you. And the second thing is, if you're looking for funding, finding those VC firms that are focused on the types of work that you're trying to put out in the world, because they're going to understand you the best without having to explain yourself like maybe a traditional fund where you might have to do something like that. So
maybe just 30 seconds. I think on creatives especially, I think maybe the attitude and the thinking has changed. There's a quotation that nothing succeeds like success, right? So at the end of it, I'm sure Burna Boy's mom does not think her son is not successful, right? In fact, I think she's his manager, right? So I think there is a very conscious change and a change of attitude towards creatives. You will not find institutions more conservative like the Africa Export Bank, but in spite of that, we're
Mayor Officer Sean Citizen Affairs Service speaking. Yes, me on the phone. Mm-hmm. No, I emailed. This was email. He emailed us and I copy you and respond to that email, giving you my phone number and tell you that you can call me because I don't have your phone number. Yeah, but did you receive that email? Yeah. Where are you working? Oh, roofing company. Okay. Where is located? Oh, wow. Are you driving? How many mileage is that? Miles is from your place today? How many miles is from your place to where you are? Okay, 35 minutes. So you're looking for a job around where? Southeast? Or? Because 35 is, to me, is not that. I was wondering this is more than 35.
A Mozambican youth consultation before this
It's
meeting.
an hour.
So
You said
this is not
afternoon is an
Amelia
hour,
only
almost
speaking.
an
I'm
hour.
speaking on behalf of Mozambicans youth
How
here
about
living
the
here in the
salary?
United States.
Salary? How
The
much
second
is it?
the second question is about climate justice. Some of our countries, they still need to develop, and it means that we will need to use some fossil
You're looking
fuels.
for-
So how was
No,
it
you said
approached during these
16.10.
conferences? Climate justice and climate justice and global solidarity, and the contributions. African diaspora here in the United States is very diverse. We are not the same.
Huh?
Some of us are privileged, some of us are not. But the other question is like, who are we? I heard you talking about numbers. I was looking for numbers to come to this conference. That was my first question. Who are we? And this is a question and also a contribution.
Yeah.
Because of the difficulty I had to find
respond
this
to my
answer,
email, send
I
me a
think that we
resume.
need to learn about these numbers that I heard today. Let's map
please send me
and
a
let's make these
resume.
numbers
For a
known.
fact
We
one.
need to know who are we, what we are capable of, what
Tomorrow?
are our needs,
What
what
day?
are our
Contract.
potentials to
Yeah, tomorrow.
build a strong African youth diaspora. So this is the first contribution. The second contribution is in
Yes,
relation,
74.
sorry, so 10 seconds. So the second contribution is in relation to map our skills
see.
here. If we want to partner with our youth in Africa, we are not there. We
This is
cannot
looking-
forget that.
Oh, you
So
may
let's
take another warehouse.
map our
Be
skills
well.
here and see how we can, how our
But
skills
even
can
the one that,
maximize the
we had a
needs
work-
that are there and partner with our fellow youth Africans. I had the third, but I forgot
take
now.
from
The
our
third is a question. How can we, because we had a lot of contributions to give and questions, so
Let's have
is
some
there a
noise,
way
huh?
we can channel these contributions that we are not, there is no time to put here? Is there a channel?
But I understand your
So thank you.
concern versus to your age.
Oh,
and
thank you
so
very much.
this
I
is
think
progressive
with a question
and
about
looking
COP24,
for people
as well as
looking
climate
for
justice,
now later.
the good thing
So
is that we
you
have
don't, you are not
Mr. Tambara here
aggressive
who
by
can
me, I
give
know
us
Jubilee was
maybe his
trying to
take
hire
on
other
that.
people as well.
Then when it comes to the diaspora and who are we and mapping the skills. Say that again? Very good. Thank you so much. So we have a rich audience. Mr. Tambara, please.
Yeah, thank you. I will not be able to speak so much in terms of what happened at the COP, but I definitely know the conversation around human rights abuses has been happening. In Africa, when we met for the first time, Africa met in Kigali in July to discuss how we want to manage the environment and our protected areas going forward. As you know, the history of creation of protected areas on the continent definitely involved abuse of human rights. People were relocated without their will and other nature of human rights abuses. And that's something that the continent stakeholders were they agreed to address, but also more importantly, going forward, how do we make sure that conservation and all the approaches that we are bringing to address climate are people-centered and do not lead to abuse of human rights. Here in the US, we have been engaged. The US government was very, had spotlighted that issue when issues of human rights abuses came up, especially in Central Africa, in terms of conservation, and we've been engaged with them. Our CEO last year testified to Congress on what needed to be done in making sure that we avoid such situations and we have redress mechanisms in place, but also we have free, prior and informed consent when we are bringing in programs into communities, making sure that they are fully consulted and they have contributed to the ideas and how the programs are designed and shaped. So I can certainly say that's an important focus right now among policymakers. And coming out of Kigali, it was a commitment from governments that were there to make sure that going forward we'll avoid human rights violations in not only in conservation but also in the climate space. And I'm sure those are things that are being talked about, that were talked about in the climate COP, but certainly so in the biodiversity COP as well in Montreal. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Mr. Mamadou Samba, give your opinion on engaging the
No, I just want to
diaspora.
provide some resources to the lady who asked a question about the data about the African diaspora. And so to me, when we come to a panel like this, and there's a call to action from Ms. Pemba earlier, she opened up with a call to action. In other words, the things that we're saying, let's do it, just go ahead and do it, right? Let's not assume somebody else is going to do it if you think we need it. But the question about the data, there isn't a national report that collects all of these things. The Migration Policy Institute conducts studies around the African diaspora. The US Census publishes a 3-year survey and a 10-year that collects all of the data on all US citizens, but you can break it out into the different African communities that when I served as the director of Office of African Affairs for 4 years, I actually wrote one of those based on the data that we collected from the US Census that broke down in this metropolitan area. Back then, 5 years ago, there was 112 African diaspora in the 3 states, broken down by countries, language, national origin, even salary and education you can actually find. So the point is, you won't find this in one place. You just have to go to multiple places to consolidate the data to tell the story that you want to tell. But that's essentially the advice I wanted to give. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I think one point that we could add on the survey that Mamadou is talking about, which is different in different areas according to the works that different agencies do, is also that we need also to know and remember that the diaspora does not stop on the continental diasporans who have got the passports. today of the 55 member nations, the diaspora goes beyond 400 years ago with African Americans who are really all yearning to go do what their DNA tests, to know which countries they come from, to know where do they send their children to go kiss the land, the ground where their great-grandparents came from. So let's also bring that into conversation. Actually, as you saw, the invitation or the material for the US-Africa Summit, when it talks about diaspora, it's talking about all people of African descent. So let's have that at the back of our mind during this conversation. I know that we are welcoming to everybody that has got the origin. Yes, someone has another question? Yes, please.
My name is Dr. Metal Alexander. I'm with the Institute for Academic Management. As we're launching our first academy here in Washington, D.C., for both academics and apprenticeships, part of our model is geared towards African diaspora for our children, of African American children. How do we partner with the African Union per se? As you just mentioned, how do our children relate back to one of those 55 member countries to find their heritage per se? How do we build that, that relationship? The lady mentioned we start here and then we branch out. How do we begin that process as an institute here? First in DC and then across the nation, then to Africa, then to Brazil, then to the rest of the world? My question.
That's a good question. I don't know if our youth envoy has an answer for that, but definitely I know some of us can be able to chip in and give an answer for that question. I don't want to continue to hold the mic. If our youth envoy has something to give, please go on, and then we see also someone else that might have an answer, and then we'll all bring it together.
Thank you.
And that's to say collaboration over competition. Because what happens is the space is very small, and we find that everyone is doing something in such a fragmented way instead of actually coming together. And when we work in solidarity and when we collaborate, then we can have more impact and bigger impact on the continent. So guarantee you that there's so many wonderful stuff that's being done, in the diaspora as well as on the continent to integrate, people within the diaspora. But because of the fragmented of the activities that are happening at times, it doesn't bring in that coordination. So having said that, that could be something as well where the African Union comes in, more of the coordination and more of giving out information. For your own information, within the African Union, we actually have a department that deals with that, civil. And that department is specifically there to deal with relations when it comes to, our diaspora community specifically. So you find that, once we bridge that gap of, access to information, collaboration and cooperation, then definitely can do it much better and have bigger impact from now and for the future generation on the continent.
So I'm part of the Well, I'm a Commonwealth citizen, so I already have my Commonwealth. I now need the African Union.
Okay. Thank you very much for mentioning CEDAW, because that's where we, the African Union Commission, come from and say the engagement of the diaspora around the world goes into this department. And the mission here, the African Union mission to the US, we endeavor to feed into the department to make sure that the questions that are asked here are fed into and then become a conversation so we find the solutions.
Actually, I've had my hand raised a little while now. Could I follow up? All right. So my name is Musangu Bukasa. I'm currently pursuing my master's in business administration at University of Maryland. I've worked for the Model African Union, or I've volunteered for the Model African Union and the African Student Association as well. I can see what you said about dividends helping with diaspora youth, and you guys have said something interesting about, sorry, I got a little bit of a cold. Said something interesting about how the diaspora is the sixth region in Africa. So I would say that African Union is in a great opportunity to contribute to the nation as a whole, but I would like to propose that the African Union connects with the African student associations at these different universities and is able to bring in this value from these different areas so that these different ideas can be brought forth, because we have the Model African Union, but the entrepreneurship ideas aren't necessarily being taken advantage of. So I'm currently consulting for a different organization through my master's in business administration. So a lot of people can contribute. So I would like for there to be a new connection between universities with African diaspora people in the DMV and everywhere else. So would that be a possibility?
Yes, I think that's a possibility because every year we have a discussion with the Model African Union. So the thing is to pull us together, all of us, the students and the associations, so that we can be able to build a stronger connection.
And would it be possible for there to be a business challenge sort of situation where each country has a different unique problem? So if each group or cohort were able to consult and bring their own unique ideas and perspectives on solving these countries' issues, I believe that would be able to bring some tangible value to the African Union through master's candidates.
I think those are the ways that maybe we need to put in place. The conversation with these groups are the ones that are going to shape what is going to be the policy or what's going to be the next steps in as far as these questions being answered are concerned. Yes, we have only 2 questions. All right. We have more than 2. All right, so we're going to divide the seconds. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you very much, brother. I think this is the beginning. As the youth envoy said, a listening tour and everything that is being done to bring us together. This is the beginning. 100 people that are here are your network.
Anyway, so I think that maybe warranted a quick response. And I'll say that, at least from our experience, the yeah. No. But the point that I'm making is that from my experience, actually, it is much easier to finance your kind of business than tech, and the majority of financing goes to normal business. It's extremely difficult for a tech venture to come to a bank to get credits, but it is extremely easy, right, for your with your business model for you to present it, and then we do whatever assessment we need to do quickly, easily. So I would say it's maybe the other way around, where there is attention on tech because it's difficult to finance, while perhaps these normal businesses are much, much easier to finance as long as you have a proper business plan, a proper proposal, and a track record which can be used to assess your credit risk.
If I can just, is it okay? If I can just add to that, I think I also agree, and I think it goes back to access to information. Maybe we need to bridge the gap to make sure that young people have access to information. But I'll also say something that's very controversial that I found in my role, that as young people, not specifically you, but in general, there's also a sense of entitlement without research being done most of the time. So it's a midway where we need to also ensure that we provide that information, but also young people start to research more in terms of what is actually out there. And specifically, I like that you brought in the fact about those that don't have access to technology. And maybe I'll give one example of the listening tour that we recently did. We realized that it's actually a gap. So as a result of that, the model that we used was youth engagement, where I held youth town halls in urban cities, and then the second model was actually community engagements, where we went to visit rural, marginalized communities, because I realized that, you know, they also need to be represented, and they might actually not even have access to this information. For example, when we went to Ghana, we went to visit a market, and this market was, you know, where young people came together and they formed a cooperative to sell shea butter. And these young people that are coming from rural areas are also victims of early teenage pregnancy and early marriages. But because of, you know, the fact that they've been disadvantaged previously, at times they don't have information in terms of what their feeling is doing and how they can be represented. When I went to Nigeria, I went to visit a Kudu district, the same thing. High school dropouts as a result of COVID-19, they're also in the rural areas, and as a result of that, we're trying to see how can we bridge that gap to ensure that they're also empowered and have access to the opportunities that are out there. Just one of the few examples as well.
And very quickly on that, I mean, I sense the angst and the frustration in your voice a little bit. I think that fintech makes a lot of money, and when things make a lot of money, very quickly, they get attention. But I think to the point that was being made, most of the places that VC funding and funding overall is going isn't necessarily in fintech. In the thesis for Future Africa, I mentioned talent, infrastructure, markets, and environments, none of which are focused on financial technologies per se. So I think to the point of doing the research and finding the information, yes, if it gets headlines and all of that, great. But if you're looking for funding, look for the investors that are focused on the areas where you're doing work and go after those, and you'll get what you're looking for. So just tapping onto the points that were made.
Thank you so much, Vivian. And we have someone in the back, about two, and then we're done.
Okay, finally. Okay, so my name is Johnny Rongo. I'm a PhD candidate in computer science, and I'm also from Nairobi, Kenya. So either Sodipo or Vivian can answer this, and it's actually a concern. I know the US Africa Summit is coming next week, but in my opinion, our readers don't seem to get it, because especially when we've all talked about talent and also technology, I've noticed in Kenya, yes, the partnership is good, but when these companies come, they tap the best talent, like software engineers, data engineers, at the expense of the local startups, because they pay top dollar. So like in Kenya, the local startups started by the youth, they're losing talent to American companies. Google, Microsoft, they all set shop in Nairobi this year. And so that's one. So African Union, African Exim, or talking about funding. So how can that be addressed? The last question, it's about when they set companies in Nairobi, like software engineering, data science, they are not paid at a global scale with the rest of the world. So what you'll find is that companies will set shop, but the pay of a software engineer in Nairobi, and these are youth, very talented people, they are not paid in commensurate by the same companies as how they pay their partners, maybe, their software engineers like in the US. So how can that be addressed? Or as we forge this partnership, which are the checks to protect our local talent and also the local startups as we seek a win-win solution?
I was going to say ladies first, so otherwise I would have just gone ahead. But Vivian, you want to go
Very
first?
quickly, and then you can go. It's a cycle, right? So we're talking about you're skilling up and focusing on skilling up young people. The faster they get skilled up, the greater their talent is, which means the greater they're available for other places to take them. So we have a lot of work to do within this community to create more startups, create more businesses that are employing the youth that are getting these skills. So part of that is on us to get to a place where we've got enough businesses that are sustainable, that are hiring the people that we're skilling up. So I think that part of it is just within us. We need to be doing more work, creating more companies, getting more funding into companies on the continent, and then hiring the people that are getting those skills. So that's part of the answer. I don't know if you have more to.
Right. No, absolutely. I think that's the core of the answer, but I think it's also good to sort of put it in context, right? So you have one entrepreneur, owner of the company, you have 20 staff. Really, will it be fair to prevent an employee from moving to a place where he can get more funds? You know, no government can stop someone from doing the best for his own livelihood, for his own family's livelihood, you know, and so on and so forth. So it's also a demand and supply thing. To the extent that, so I would say you want to try to create enough value so that you can reward your employees in a manner that, you know, they will feel satisfied. And for most employees, it's not just about the money also, right? You give them enough to be happy, right? Maybe not everything, but are you creating an environment where they feel loyal enough? Are you giving them shares in the company, for example, as a local startup? Because I think that's one tested and tried measure that startups in tech have used to attempt to retain talent. So of course, if you're not going to give them that, then really, why should they, do all of that? But fundamentally, like she said, then we need to train more people so that there will be more staff and labor available and create demand. But I think my brother here has excellent answers.
Yeah.
If you can make it short, because there are people who have been waiting for it.
Yeah, and what you've just said is a typical problem I experienced in the very early years of my startup. And as Jeff said, it is not ethical to stop somebody from chasing better opportunities. I actually recommend my team, my initial team, it went through 3 teams, that if you have like a company you really want to work for, I will give you a recommendation letter in the best way possible to my best ability. And I always try to like look for the founding team or the members of the team to be in such a way that they are kind of aligned with the vision of the company, and they try to see where we're at and where we're going, and if they don't feel a sense of commitment or alignment to the mission, then they are free to go. And another way is to give them this kind of a cliff vest kind of a commitment to the company. Like, if you work for 5 years, you get this number of shares, but more or less you have to be very careful, because if you give that quite earlier on, they don't become very productive. But I've said key mission alignment.
Thank you so much, Arnold and the team. Yes, we have one, and then Sakweku, you're the last person. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I just want to make a comment, because when I came here, I took time to read my invitation, and it was clear stating here that we were coming here. One of the key points was to, as a that last, right, with the U.S. government. I think that's what will prepare us to the summit where we're going. But I felt like the discussion has been led to more about our internal things. We didn't focus more on the ideas or understanding what the U.S. is really requiring from us to build that partnership. So the one thing that I want everyone to keep in mind is when someone comes to seek for partnership, it's because they want to advance the agenda. So the U.S. is here seeking partnership with Africa to help them advance the agendas. Now, as youth, we need to understand this agenda to learn how we can tap into those opportunities those agendas are giving us. So they give different things here. The way I'm reading it is like in the governing, right? We have to understand what are the agendas of America in governing. I used to work for I work for the federal government, so we need to understand what are the agenda in governing, right? So if we really want to become partners, we need to understand the agendas. In entrepreneurship, the same thing also. They have already entities and money that they're spending. The government doesn't spend money to help. They spend money to advance the agenda. And then they have entities that they use to spend those money. So if you really want to tap into those things, you have to understand these agendas. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's also almost the same thing. So you go to a company, you go to a summit, you go to meet an investor, you have to understand where he's investing and what he wants to accomplish with his investment if you want to tap in those kind of funds. And we don't even need to create so many things because there's so many countries that has done it already, like India. If you run a big company, most of your hiring process is outsourced in India because they know how to get to those partners and give them ideas that will help them grow, make more money. Because that's all it's about sometimes when you seek partnership. It's like how you're going to advance the agenda. So I really want to the youth here, the future leader, to understand that when you go to a partner, it's not only about what you want, it's like how well you help your partner to advance his agenda and to make him, if he's an entrepreneurship way, is how well you help him get more money. So it's just like that. If we can refocus on that, then we'll prepare ourselves and we'll be successful for the summit that will come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was an eye-opening contribution. We thank you so much. I think we all should keep that in mind, that definitely partnership is two-way. So it's not one way, it's two-way. Thank you. Next person, please.
Hello. My name is Kweku Amwako. I'm founder of Afropolitan Cities. I work a lot with professionals and entrepreneurs in the diaspora, and I know for a fact that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have a common problem across the U.S., which is lack of funding, right? There are a lot of ideas. There are a lot of driven, talented, skilled people in the diaspora, but a lot of them still struggle from that same problem. So for Afri-Exim Bank and Future Africa, my question to you is, do you have any programs specifically targeting entrepreneurs? Because that advantage, you know, I like the conversation about investing in the youth and entrepreneurs in Africa, but we're also thinking about partnerships between diaspora and Africa. And as we're thinking about empowering entrepreneurs on the continent, we should also be thinking about entrepreneurs here. So what are your programs, investment programs targeting African entrepreneurs here in the diaspora as well?
Yeah, so very quickly, I think Afrique Bank has adopted the AU approach to diaspora, right? That's diaspora being the 6th region of the continent. And we certainly actually have an aspect of what we call our intra-Africa trade banking that is focused on the diaspora. So yes, we absolutely have business lines that is focused on investments and trade and financing diaspora, and there are funds allocated for that. But then again, it has to be the right kind of project, it has to have the right kind of profile. But yes, absolutely, we recognize the importance of supporting African diaspora as a 6th region, and we have dedicated facilities and interventions for that. Thank you.
And in terms of the fund, the focus is on businesses that are on the continent or in Africa. So if you are sitting in the diaspora but you have a focus and your business has a focus on the continent, you're eligible for funding if you're fitting within that thesis. So we're not precluding anybody from being able to get funding, but the focus is having a footprint, having a target market that is on the African continent. That's the main. So we're not excluding people from getting funding, but your focus has to be on the continent.
Okay, so two people are raising their hands, and it's going to be only the last ones so that we can conclude. Yes, please.
Okay, I just wanna encourage everyone in this room, and I'm not speaking against the bank, so just to clarify. Your network is your net worth. Keep that in mind. So you don't always have to go get funding from banks. Build your village. Surround yourself with the right people. Identify all the bits and pieces that you need for your business to be viable. I personally built a multi-million-dollar business based on my network, and we now operate in 6 countries. I'm sharing this not to be cocky or snobbish, but to tell you it can be done. Yes, banks are very important, but they're not for everything. They may not understand. They didn't understand, so I built my network. So one of the things that we all need to think about is think outside the box. Don't be quick to go to the bank. Think about who do I know within my immediate sphere of influence that I can tap into. Who do I know within that sphere that can take me to somebody else that can then come and help me with specific things that I need. So remember that your network is your network.
Right, thank you very much. Then the last person, and then we have our youth envoy to come and wrap up for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ahmed Bketrat, and I'm from Mauritania. I'm very glad and honored to be part of you today. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity. We as a African youth community should start thinking and keep asking about our government. If we have the opportunity right now to speak, why we will always keep waiting for the Occidental world to invest in us, why we don't invest in ourselves. Our government can do that, but they don't have the courage to move on. And maybe in the future, as a youth community right now, we should start thinking about nationalization like every companies in our countries. That's how we will grow up, and that's how we will be countries. So I just want to tell you that if our voice can be heard from our leaders or our president, that will be my comment for today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. So this is going to wrap up the conversation. Our envoy is going to be the one that is going to come up and give us a wrapping up statement. Because of the time, we are not going to have the breakup session. This was meant to be for coverage of the breakup session. So let's invite our youth envoy to come to the podium, please. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists and who have taken 2 tasks, please. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, so we have come to the end of today's session. I will not say much because already a lot has been said today. I won't read speeches, but just to thank you and extend my gratitude for everyone who's come to join us today and who are still here pretty much as we've gone a bit over time, but it shows your passion that you have in terms of building the Africa that we want, an Africa that also includes young people and our youth within the diaspora. There's so much that has gone into this event, and I'd like to thank each and every person that has also played a role in this coming together our youth within the diaspora that are part of the working group and committee that have done a wonderful job, my team that has traveled as well with me from Addis Ababa, and everyone who's formed part of this audience, because without you, we were not going to have these contributions, as well as these wonderful recommendations that have come. And as I said, I honestly believe in less speeches and more concrete action. So guaranteed, what we've discussed here is to ensure that young people are fully incorporated when it comes to international cooperation and integration. And we will take the recommendations and the solutions that have come out of here to ensure that I fully advocate. We were taking note of everything, and as soon as we've completed our recommendations document, which will also take really so much into what our audience has contributed within the Q&A session as well. We're supposed to have breakout sessions, but unfortunately because of time, we decided to just have that as a Q&A session. Again, this is not the end, this is the beginning. It does not have to end with this specific period of the US-Africa Summit. This is my second time in my engagement with youth in the diaspora, and I still hope to continue in doing so as I continue with my mandate for next year and 2024. So thank you very much. Looking forward to meet, looking forward to engage. I am still around ahead of the US-Africa Summit that's happening next week, and I do hope that on the sidelines we'll be able to grab a coffee, share ideas, and ensure that our network will be our network as we engage with one another. Thank you.
What is Africa? Is it the wildlife, the beautiful coasts, thriving cities? It is more than that. It is the people. Our 55 countries have many things in common. Our cultures bind us together. They give us strength and identity. They make us proud. By sharing our knowledge and working together, we're building a new Africa that's driven by investments, by game-changing infrastructure projects, and using transformative technology to change the way we live, work, and conduct business. Using our largest natural resource, our vast arable land, we are making advances in agriculture, developing new industries, creating jobs, and improving livelihoods. Together, we are moving forward on economic integration. By consolidating Africa's significant internal market to foster trade within the continent and with the world, Africa is open for business. We are building the Africa we want. So, what is the continent of the future? The answer is Africa.